I call this Creve Coeur School District 76 Committee, the whole meeting, February 18th, 2014, to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Linda Bailey.
Here.
Pam Greiner.
Here.
Brenda Cagle.
Here.
Val Reagan.
Here.
Julie Troop. Absent. Rebecca Kern here. Judy Strong.
Present.
Ms. Troop is absent because she is in the hospital. She had to have some surgery yesterday, and it wasn't. It was one of those things, not like an emergency, but it needed to be done quickly, and so she is in the hospital. Thought it was going to be an in and out kind of thing, but they kept her. So. She seemed to be doing okay. She texted me and told me all of this, so over text she was doing okay. So,
Thank you.
just so everybody knows.
Okay, we're gonna look at our policies this evening, board policies that we've had some struggle in getting conversations in on. Discussion of the press updates have been brought, and Mr. Aldridge sent to us out his synopsis on those. So, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, the first policy is just, they're all general personnel. This one is 5:50, and it's drug and alcohol-free workplace tobacco prohibition. So the press has recommended changes that are related to the Medical Marijuana Act and how this new law is going into effect, but employers can prohibit the possession, use, or being under the influence of medical cannabis while at work. So at least we have that much. So that is that was the impetus for this change. There's an optional paragraph which addresses the use of prescription, over-the-counter and non-prescription, the other way around, non-prescription over-the-counter medication and prescription medications. I'm not really in favor of this optional paragraph for two reasons, as I put here. Could lead to a situation where the employer starts asking about medications and related health information, which we're prohibited from asking, and the fact that we are also our own health insurance provider. And I didn't go into looking and research, but I think we would have to understand what the HIPAA regulations would be and how this policy would affect that, being that we are covered as a policy or insurer. So those were my comments and recommendation.
Thank you. Could you verify which paragraph you're talking about here, though? Are you talking about number 4 on the first page of it?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it number 6?
Is that where the optional is?
Or number 11?
It's
They're all over the place.
I think it's page, on the first one,
I think
cannabis, it's
6.
4.
Number 6?
Yes.
Okay.
Number 6.
Thank you.
Footnote number 6, I'm sorry.
Yep.
And at the top there, under number 2, unless otherwise prohibited by this policy, prescription and over-the-counter medications are not prohibited when taken in standard doses and or according to the prescriptions from the employee's licensed healthcare provider, provided that an employee's work performance is not impaired. Now, You know, I don't want to get into trying to determine when an employee is impaired or not impaired. That's a tough enough job when we're talking about students being under the influence. And it's just, it's not something, I just wouldn't be in favor of going there, especially when we start talking about standard dosages and according to prescriptions and asking people for their prescriptions and their, you know, doctor's notes and all that kind of, I mean,
Then that would put us in violation.
I don't know.
It just depends. I mean, I know the hospital does it. If they think you're impaired, they have a right to take you and get you tested. You know, my employer, you know, so it doesn't matter if you took a Vicodin or not. You know, if I took 2 Vicodin and I was impaired, I shouldn't have been at work.
Number 3 also has an optional one, alcohol only. Would that be one that we wouldn't be including?
Optional. Alcohol is not addressed in either the federal or state drug-free workplace acts.
Yeah, is not addressed.
3 is, and alcoholic beverage.
Yeah.
But in the current policy for Creve Coeur, under the influence of alcohol, distribution, consumption, use, possession, or being under the influence of alcohol, rather than an alcoholic beverage. That's what they changed. Under the influence of alcohol, they struck that and said an alcoholic beverage. It's a language change.
Okay.
I don't know. This is your time.
I don't
You got my
know.
recommendation, but
I understand the HIPAA law and everything, but, you know, we've had a lot of people coming back from surgery when I think maybe they're coming back early, and I don't know that they're still taking pain medication. I don't know that, but I would hate to think that you have someone that's coming back that's still taking pain medications, and what if something were to happen? Then are we responsible for that, even though they may have been impaired? You can't
What
tell.
if they slipped and fell because they got a little dizzy?
Yeah. I mean, where do we, where do?
releases them.
and
But
then
but they're still
taking
taking
that on their
pain
own.
medication.
Right, but they're doing that on their own. We're not telling them to take medicine. We're not, you know, forcing that. I don't think that our liability would be any more because they voluntarily have done that and they've come to the workplace impaired. Then if they have an
But
accident.
if you put in there you can't test them or do that, then you can't say they were impaired. I mean, if you have that stricken to say that, let's not put it in here, you know, then you can't say they were impaired.
So, can you, I'm not an attorney, I don't know that I understand all this stuff, so can we, I understand that you say that accept the changes that comply with the law, but what are we not, I mean, you're not suggesting that we adopt, I guess, what is it that we're not adopting?
Number 6.
And
Be-
four.
But what is that? Okay,
Or
I
if
know
he
what
wants to
I'm,
adopt
I know what
four,
I'm
but he
reading.
doesn't want to adopt
Oh,
six,
okay.
right?
Right, take the policy as it's written, but not the optional one, which
Oh,
is
this
numbers,
one. Okay.
that paragraph
Okay.
under number 2, that
All right.
optional one. And that's just my recommendation, board members. You're the ones that have to decide it.
Why would the state write a policy like this if it's illegal?
And it goes through their attorneys.
Yeah, I just don't understand why they would do this.
I don't know that it's not, I don't know that it's illegal, this policy
No, I mean
language.
6. Why would they even suggest that we may or may not want to do it if it's not really
Oh,
legal?
okay, I see where it says 6 now.
An employer should generally not ask an employee about his or her medication. See the rules implementing the Americans with Disabilities Act. Consult your board attorney if an employee is suspected of working while impaired. It's not addressed in the Federal Workplace Policy Act.
Right.
So you have the local control to go ahead and address it if that's what your, what your local board wants to do. Because the federal law doesn't say anything, neither does the state. So if it's something you wanted to address, here's their suggested language for you.
And
Okay.
to address a board attorney.
Right.
And my thing was, I don't know how this falls into, since we are our own insurer, and we are, we do our own insurance,
We're self-insured as well.
then I don't know how this policy will play out with the insurance, that's all. I'm just bringing that up as a red flag. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if we leave it in, it does say to state your attorney, or contact your attorney before you use it. So at least it would be available if we ran into a situation we did that. The way I look at it.
I don't think it hurts to have it in there because it protects the board and the school. If you take it out, then you have no recourse. That's fine.
And Mr. Aldridge, you did give your reasons why. Number one is pretty clear, that perhaps we are infringing in an area we shouldn't be, prohibited from asking.
Well, I guess, Ms. Strong, what I was doing was raising some concerns, some things, some issues
Right.
related to this. And, my recommendation would be not to adopt it, but that's just my recommendation. You're the Board of Education, these are your policies.
To adopt the policy, but not with.
Yeah, the policy, but not the optional. And that's all I'm talking about,
Okay.
is the optional part. The rest of the policy just really addresses the Cannabis Act and the possession or use of medical cannabis at work.
Any further comments?
I have a question about footnote number 8. Where will this be posted, and do you need to change the wording at all?
Post notice of this policy in a place where other information for employees is posted.
Right, so I don't know if
So
we have a book or
the
internet or
bulletin
where it
boards
is.
in the teacher's lounge, or the teacher's, teacher's lounge, I guess it's called, staff lounge. Yeah, that's where we put the OSHAs, the public, the labor law posters and all, any of the union things go up on the bulletin boards.
I know at one time we talked about an employee handbook or something like that, so it would be all contained, so I didn't know where you were at on that.
Okay, so what's the decision of the board?
Well, we probably need to just put a consensus, a hand consensus, who's ready to adopt as is the 550.
Well, consensus, because this is
Right.
just a committee of the whole, we're just saying that this is,
And we'll have to
how do you
vote
want
it.
to proceed and take it to the first reading?
Right.
Do you want the additional or you don't want the additional? And I'm okay either way.
And we can change
Laying
it
it out.
at the first policy. Can we change it if you do some research? If any of us do research and find that, oh, maybe we should have done something, can we change it, or does the staff just stick?
At the first reading, you can suggest revisions to the policy. That's there.
it's
You're
not
making the
in
motion
conflict
to
with
adopt
this.
it, you
Yeah.
put it up there as a revision, but then that puts it back into, okay, is it now revised and we have to wait another 30 days and all of that stuff? That's
Right.
why to get it
So I
kind of
guess the
out
greater
here.
concern
I
is-
mean, we've had these for months.
I know, a couple months.
Okay.
Since December, I believe. Okay,
Just-
if you'll just show of hands, ready to process this one into the first readings.
With or without the paragraph.
As is, yeah, without any additions.
As it's stated here.
That's the,
That's with it.
that's with it.
Okay,
Correct.
as it's here.
No, the things that he told us not to put in.
You're
the-
striking those out, so it's not as presented.
No,
I
it
said
is
reference.
presented because they're saying do it this way. But you
Right.
have an option to do it.
But this
in
is,
the footnotes.
this is the paragraph, the language that's in the policy
Right.
as is, or as presented.
As presented.
Right, so that's with the optional paragraph.
Yes.
As presented by press.
Yeah.
I think that's where the
So that
confusion
you
is.
leave that in there.
This
Mr.
one in
Alders
here.
was suggesting we take that out.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They included,
Non-policy.
yeah, no, they've included this additional paragraph in their policy, and the optional paragraph. But down here, it says this is an optional paragraph that you may or may not want.
I understand, okay, so it's, first of all, it is optional, and second of all, you can replace it.
You take it out,
Yeah.
don't have to accept it.
Okay, now that I'm clear, is everybody else clear?
That's
Yep.
why I was asking for the
you.
clarification.
Right.
It is confusing.
Okay, thank you. For that, Grace, so as without the paragraph that Mr. Aldrich has suggested us leaving out and not taking any of the optional footnotes, so as is 550, is that clear?
No, now you've completely lost me. As presented,
This is not part of it. This would be
You wanna remove-
optional.
You
So-
want to remove the
Optional,
paragraph.
yeah, you're removing the optional.
There's several optionals though. So,
Okay.
but you're removing the one
Just the one
Paragraph
within
six,
the,
unless-
with the six.
yeah, just the one within the main
So
thrust of the
you want to
policy.
remove, unless otherwise prohibited by this policy, prescription over-the-counter medications are not prohibited when taken in a standard dosage and/or according to the prescription from the employees. Licensed healthcare provider, provided that the employee or employee's work performance is not impaired. You want to remove that.
That is what has been suggested that we adopt
And that's,
without that in
but
there.
that's what you're asking. us to
Yes,
vote on.
who would be in agreement on that?
I would say that I would be. I'm more concerned about the HIPAA issue.
I say leave it, take our chances.
I say leave it.
Looking
Say
from
leave it, it's
press.
there if we need to
Yeah.
use it.
I have it on my policy at work.
All right, it looks like the consensus is saying that we leave it and adopt it as presented then.
Bring it back in this form for the first reading then. And then everybody gets to vote in case
Yes.
they want to change their mind.
Yes.
Do research on it.
Very good.
Now, we didn't
Hmm?
make any comments on the general personnel 550. We were kind of just focusing on the first pages.
That's the old one. That's the one, or not old one. That is the current policy for Creve Coeur School District.
Thank you.
Okay, so in front is the press
Got it.
revisions, and then
I haven't looked at it
after, yeah. I-
since December.
So, yeah, so these,
Got it.
I just put the current ones behind
Thank
it,
you.
so we can compare and contrast.
That's good. Thank you.
So,
All right, I'm going to catch up here.
okay. So we're in 5:90. Abused and neglected child reporting. Okay, as you know, we're all mandated reporters. This policy is reorganized, and it adds references to the new law. The policy includes hazing as an abuse subject to reporting, and adds other mandatory training for staff, which we completed last month in our early Teacher Institute Day. So that was done. Let's see. Again, I suggest adopting the new policy in whole with the new format. The current policy is at least one revision behind, so I suggest adopting the entire new policy to bring it into alignment with the press. And I don't suggest adopting the optional paragraph, and here we go again, which addresses the content of a DCFS report. I think it's better practice is for staff to use the protocol DCFS recommends when making a hotline call. They went through, and the only reason I have this paragraph, that part in there, is because of the training we had, and they go through what it is that they're asking and what they want to know, and some of these things here it's just too open to interpretation. They're more fact-based. Any other information that the reporter believes may be helpful to DCFS for its investigation. They were pretty specific as to what details they were looking for when we make reports. So that's just a suggestion in not adopting that part and letting it go through the process that DCFS had. So that is optional, let's see, number 3. I'm sorry, footnote number 3. And it says DCFS concerning filing a report within 48 hours with the nearest DCFS field office. And then number 3, for a board that wants to include what a DCFS report should contain, an optional sentence follows. And that's there, added for your review and consideration.
All right, any discussion?
It says in footnote number 2, the very last line, for elementary districts, delete the following. So shouldn't we delete?
Delete the following phrase from the first sentence and insert the following sentence. They took all
18
that
through
out.
21-year-olds. Did we in our
It's
last
crossed out,
note?
right?
Should have.
He said it's 2.
So they're saying to take it out. Right.
But this is the ones. Is he older than?
Okay, yeah, it's already in the footnote, it's already striked out, right?
So all they suggest is striking that out.
For a student age 18 through 21, an abused and neglected individual with a disability. Okay, and that is in the current pre-core policy. So,
Right, okay. Yeah, thank you. So that's-
And in that first paragraph, it says the employee shall also promptly notify the superintendent or the building principal. Shouldn't it be and, or do you leave that up to the principals to notify you?
I would think that follows that chain of command principle. Then if that person feels that it hasn't been done, the chain of command would take it on up to the superintendent. Is that not how it's been done in the past? I think so.
So I would think the superintendent would want to know regardless.
Absolutely.
right, and that's standard practice, I suppose, and in your, as your administration, and your expectations, speaking to them, administration needs to know, exactly right. Employees shall also promptly notify the superintendent or building principal that a report has been made. I think that's for large school districts too, who probably 5,000 students, you're not gonna
Good point.
go to a superintendent, but somebody at the school has to know.
Being a
Here, we're a little bit
district,
smaller.
Yeah, being a smaller one though, the and instead of the or, I could possibly be a better,
That's fine.
So I think he should be notified regardless what happens.
both of them.
Well, and if the principal was like busy or out to a activity, I mean, at least you could almost get a hold of the superintendent too.
Email,
You just
note.
make a copy and drop it in
Right.
both mailboxes.
That's
That's a
true.
good idea.
So shall we add and, superintendent and building principal, is that? All righty.
Okay. All right, let's see. And we're going to strike for a student aged 18 through 21.
An abused or neglected individual with a disability.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Because they got it underlined and then they got it stricken through. So, we would take out that entire clause for a student aged 18 through 21 or an abused or neglected individual with a disability. Strike through all of that as we are an elementary school district.
Well, we've had students as close to 16 years of age, and 16 over in Parkview that are special ed.
Mhm.
But this is the further, so.
Yeah, this is talking about those students who are beyond the secondary school age, 18 to 21. Actually, it's through their up to
Second.
the day before their 22nd birthday, if you want to get really technical with the federal law, but,
I have a question, maybe,
Mhm.
we were at this whole thing. Isn't it assumed that since we're a K through 8 school district, that some of this doesn't apply? I mean, do we have to always take that type of thing out, or is it best to take that type of thing out?
Well, I guess
I guess that's just a
press
question.
leaves it to the local school districts, school boards, to make those kind of decisions on, things that do not apply to them.
Okay.
Because they're trying, they're covering all school districts in the state. They try to tailor these things, and then they do make the little notations down there. Yeah, that if you're elementary, you don't need to use this.
And this one in the footnotes, it does say to take it out if you're elementary. It gives specific directions.
Yeah, that's why it
That
was
usually-
already like deleted, that's why I was asking Pam.
Exactly, that usually doesn't do that, so.
I have one more question. On page 2, it says 1 and 2, complete mandated reporter training as required by law. And Mr. Aldridge just said that they had done that. But how often do we do this and where is it logged? I mean, and it's not only this
Since it's fresh.
policy, it's more policies back in here. Do we have something, or does the board receive in March of every year what was done, or, I'm just asking.
Does the board receive it?
No,
No,
we never
probably
have.
not.
I'm just saying, should we?
No, that's administration is, you've delegated the administration of the school district to administration. So we take care of those things. And yes, it is, the school districts are required to make sure all that training is done. And there are specific timelines in certain, depending on which law it is. Some things you have to be trained every 2 years. Some things you only have to be trained every 5 years, that kind of thing. So we do have a tracking system, and it was, we have a computer, we subscribe to a computer training system as well to take care of some of these things, so that the teachers can take care of, well, all staff can take care of them, on their own time as they wish. My expectation the first day, wasn't it, Holly? I think it was the first in-service day, was the expectation that we would have everyone trained and gone through the trainings that are mandated, and the regional office is the one that keeps track of the school districts to make sure that they've done these things. So it was my expectation to the staff that it would be done by January 31st. And you saw the email that I sent out, and now everybody is fully trained. Yeah.
We keep saying the board is to monitor. I just wanted to know, how is this board monitoring?
Okay.
I didn't-
Maybe not in this policy, a different one.
Yeah, not
All
this
the way
one.
through.
Right.
Not this one, and it is every 5 years. It states there, every 5 years, and that the signed forms are retained by the district office.
At least every 5 years.
Mhm.
Okay. Do substitute teachers or student teachers receive any training at all?
No,
Oh, maybe student teachers do, because they have to,
they may in
I
their,
bet
in
they
their,
do.
in
if I
their,
remember right.
okay, in their,
Mandate.
their curriculum as their student teaching, that those first classes before they go out to student teach, they probably get some kind of mandated reporting talked to. Is it training like we've done? Probably not, okay? But I guess if a student teacher is noticing it, I would expect some certified staff to have noticed it as well,
Or they report back to their supervisor.
Or they should report that, back to their supervisors. Things aren't always done, but you can't legislate for every specific scenario. You just can't.
I thought maybe ROE might do some training or something. What do you say?
Yeah, I don't think so. There's no requirement, which is.
Well, the
we do that.
colleges do, simply because they're wanting you to know that you'll be a mandated reporter, so that's pretty strong. But look at all the substitute teachers that didn't go through the educational degrees.
Right. Mhm.
So then you have to, just trust that it's in place strong enough that they are wise enough to report it to someone that can report it.
And I think they have to sign I don't know this for sure, but, we have to sign when you take a job with the school district, you have to sign the DCFS certification, sign it saying that you understand that you are a mandated reporter. And so there's like this little paragraph, it's about half a page or so, that's a DCFS form that everybody has to read and sign. So I imagine that's probably all the training they get. But
At least they're made aware of it.
they are.
Something, if you had a long-term sub in there for pregnancy leave or whatever, look at something.
Right. Right, so that duty is out there. I'm almost positive that the ROE makes them sign that piece of paper because they're the ones that do the federal the fingerprint background checks and all that. So I'm pretty sure that they do.
At least.
And isn't it faster to pick up the phone and call the DCF hotline instead of making a written report? I mean, is that that's what we're asking for?
First it is the phone call and then a follow-up written. I think that was on paragraph.
And to follow directions given by DCFS concerning filing a written report within 48 hours with the nearest field office. So DCFS is going to give you those directions when they call in, or when you call the hotline. They're going to tell you, okay, we need you to do this, this, this.
Right.
Go to our website, get the form, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Because there are instances where they will tell you that's not reportable. That's not something that we investigate. And they'll tell you right there on the hotline.
Okay.
So, yep, good questions, good questions. So, just so I'm clear, we're going to accept the policy as written by press with the changes, changing or to and striking out the clause in footnote number 2. Is that what I'm hearing? That's where we're going?
Yes, student age 18 through 21.
Yeah, we'll take that one out. Okay, good. I just want to be able to bring back the right stuff so that we don't have to, continue going through everything. Good. Thank you. Thank you. All right, 5:100, staff development program. Press indicates that the policy is a change. That is true about the press policy, but not true about the current CC 76 policy. This new press policy addresses the new mandated in-service and professional development requirements. This policy is at least one revision behind and does not contain some of the language included in the new press policy. This policy governs required training for staff, and I recommend or suggest adopting the new policy as is from press, just to bring it all into alignment. And
Comments? Directives from anybody?
This is where it said monitor, that the board's supposed to monitor. And I read it in the memo. It's on page 1 of 3, halfway down. Number three. It requires boards to conduct this in service. It provides for boards to monitor this. I'm just asking, how are we supposed to monitor?
Well, isn't it that he just gave us the verbal that they're all in compliance now, or
Yeah,
whatever, isn't that?
I'm just trying to find it.
You gotta look ahead,
That's not really monitoring, maybe a report saying, this is the service that was provided, this is the date, this is the attendance.
I guess that's one of the emails that I sent, was like, why aren't they, who isn't done, and
Right.
not that I wanted specific names, but
Right.
Yeah,
why isn't
general.
this complied with yet?
Right, we had 20% of the people that didn't comply.
Was it 3 people or 1 person?
Yeah, it was a couple, and honestly, those 3, only one of them, because it was clerical. They got it in, they gave it to Mr. Jokish instead of giving it to Ms. Millicent, so she didn't have it recorded on that day, but the teacher had it in to Mr. Jokish a week ago, and that kind of thing. So some recording errors, and there was only one person who had one more training to complete, and it was just one that was, it's a big long story, but are you sure? Because I'll go into the big long story, and make
But I guess,
all the details.
I guess what
but
we're wanting to know then is, they're all now done, and
yes,
that's what we're wanting to know.
right, they're all done. Everybody's trained on all the trainings that we are
But I mean, if
mandating.
half of them weren't doing it, then obviously, they're not.
Then I got bigger issues.
Yeah, you got bigger issues.
Right.
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 But the only reason the one staff didn't have that one module done was because she couldn't find it on the computer. And it's because it's not in the computer system that we have subscribed to. You have to go to a different computer or a different website to do that training. Okay, so, you got, I can understand.
It was oversight.
It was
Now it's done.
difficult for me
Yeah.
to find the stupid thing, So I can understand her having those problems. So we got it straightened out, and she has it done. So, it's those kind of things. And, if the board wants a written report, I can give you a written report. Of every training, of every, teacher, I don't know.
Well, I think you did, the conversation
Okay.
that you forwarded us, and that's just what it's saying.
Well,
Have a
I would like,
conversation
I would
with
like
you.
more detail. I would like, what training did they have? And I don't even care if you had 75 people in attendance, and just keep track that way. Not, because getting a thing they had training means nothing to me.
He told the training.
I know, but I just meant in general back and forth, that we had more of a spreadsheet, this is what the training was. As a year long, don't do it every month, like every 6 months maybe.
It's not required that. What I'm looking at is
Just
2
more of
years
a-
down the road.
Yeah.
Okay,
A
this
tracking.
board is supposed to monitor whether the training is done or not. We I'm just asking how.
Well,
Right,
we
'cause
don't
the
even all
tracking
do
more.
our own training either, and, you know, it's, you know what I'm saying? Everybody has to be accountable to someone, and we're asking,
Well, it's
I'd like
coming,
to know if, you know, if we have half the people aren't listening, then that's an issue. You know, if we've got one or two that haven't gotten it done yet, when are they gonna get it done? You know?
it's stated when you're gonna get some of these conversations through. Each board may then want to have a conversation with the superintendent to develop a curriculum for the in-service that instructs all district staff to maintain boundaries and act appropriately. And it keeps on going on. That it will be seen through some of our bargaining agreements above that. So when we're looking at the collective bargaining agreements and administrative procedures is when a lot of our,
Well, and I
Reporting
I
this
would
stuff.
probably find it helpful, and I think Linda probably would too, because she likes graphs. But I keep one for myself, and it just says board training, and maybe we could have one that just says staff training. And all you have to do is put what kind of training it was, the date it was held on, and
He keeps track of all that.
I realize he does,
Yeah,
but maybe
I-
if we just,
If we have to monitor it though, he keeps
Right.
track and he sets it up and he does everything.
That's
But
my
the thing
question.
is,
And if
it's
it was
our
just a-
job to make sure it is being done, because if he's not gonna be here next, like 5 years down the road, you
So
know, then
if-
the new board, the new superintendent could say, okay, this is how they did it in the past, it's been done, it's tracked, it's good.
so if it was just a continuing report, and 5 years from now, we could go back and say, okay, in 2014, they did this training, so now it's time to do it again, because it's been 5
5
years.
years.
Yeah, you know, because,
Through some type of
Yeah.
Excel sheet, spreadsheet.
right,
And I'm sure he's already got that.
he probably does.
Does the board want it at some point to monitor it? That was my only question.
Well, I don't
It
need
says
it.
monitor.
Just so we know that it's there, so if you ask for it,
Okay.
it can be printed out.
That's a good idea.
and a conversation, just a conversation
Yeah,
is all.
I don't need to see it at any certain intervals, but just so that we know that it's been created, and if you ask for it, it shouldn't be hard to have it emailed.
Okay. So was there
Right?
any other directives on this? And are we all right in leaving it the way it is instead of adding more detail?
I'm good with it.
Everybody sees that we can ask, right? Conversation. So there were none. No corrections. No corrections. We just have to watch this.
Did I send, did the one I send, didn't I take those off? Did I take all those little pages, sorry?
We sent two.
I thought I got the same one twice. Was it not the same one twice?
It was.
Okay.
One was
Okay.
Adobe and the other was
Okay.
PDF, the other was Word.
Okay.
At least I
Gotcha.
thought it was.
I
Okay.
thought they were exactly the same, but
Yeah, they should have been, so, all right, very good. And it had the administrative procedure that was left out of the book
Yes.
with it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Good, all right. So,
Sorry.
We're on number 4.
5.120.
yes. 5.120, ethics and conduct. This policy's change adds specific reference to the Illinois State Board of Education's voluntary code of ethics for Illinois educators. And the code of ethics is Code of Ethics for Illinois. In addition, the Code of Ethics for Illinois educators adopted by the Illinois State Board of Education is incorporated by reference into this policy. And we have, did I say no action necessary?
Yes, because we have the same.
Okay. Substantially, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, there you go. The CC 76 current policy is the same as the revised policy. The Code of Ethics is an optional revision, Okay, so it's just saying, if you would like to have this code of ethics incorporated by reference, then you would, accept that. But otherwise, the policies are the same. So, and I guess, I didn't have any recommendation one way or another.
Looks good to me.
Okay.
So, that's an
As is?
Except as is. Great. All right, 5120, AP2. Okay, is that the one? Here, that was the extra one, was the current policy. Got it.
Did we have that in our December voter? Or January voter?
Change.
No,
That's
that's,
the one he put in here.
yeah, that's the one
Okay,
we didn't have
thank
in
you.
this, but it.
I was-
Right, but I'm not finding it in the book, am I?
It's not in there.
It's not in the book.
Email it to us because it didn't get sent.
Right.
Right, but that's the current one, but the press one isn't in here either.
No.
Oh,
I wonder why I didn't do that. AP2.
I don't have that.
This change adds specific reference to the Code of Ethics for the Illinois educators, and it also adds a reference to the concealed carry and medical cannabis and reporting of the hazing. Again, the Code of Ethics is the optional. You already took on the medical cannabis, the reporting of the hazing, and the Code of Ethics. So this administrative procedure is just adding that into the list. So,
Since we have it, isn't it okay? to
this is your current one.
this is the current.
Right.
Have the new one.
But we don't know what the new one says. I thought that's what you wanted to add with the old one,
Oh,
but obviously there's.
That's what I thought too, that's why I printed it off.
Sorry.
I just read it on the, okay. Makes sense.
Right. That's the policy. Here's the AP. And new sentence that states, in addition, the Code of Ethics and using or possessing medical marijuana or medical cannabis, Firearm Concealed Carry Act, and reporting of the hazing. So,
Sounds
It-
very
It's,
important.
well, it's up to you if you want, I can put it in for the first reading, and we can look at it and do it that way. Or we can put this one aside since I didn't have it in the packet.
does anybody have it with them, the old one?
Yeah, the old
Says
one.
the
You have the old one, I didn't give you the
Okay.
press one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Get the new one.
That's fine.
Um,
Okay.
I
How
would-
about adding it? Are we free with adding it and then if we need to,
I
after
would
we
add it because it's not a policy and doesn't need a first reading, it just needs a board approval. So
Yeah,
you either approve it or you don't, so I
Yeah.
would say add it.
let's do that.
Okay. Good.
Just make sure we get the new one. so.
Yeah. Please.
Yep, I will email the new one and the old one
Oh, that's-
side by side, and then they got them both.
We have the old
The
one.
old one in white and the new one in yellow.
He's gonna email them.
If I email it, I can't.
Okay, but in the packet.
That's Stephanie's.
Sure would make it easier.
uh,
Be easier if they weren't back to back.
I know,
It
saves
doesn't-
paper though. White on one
I
side.
will do whatever you guys want. I don't,
It's confusing.
Let's kill 5 minutes.
I would agree.
And I think we used to kind of do that when they yellow and blue or something.
I don't know. So we're
Why is
All right, so
yellow?
he's gonna get us that one. Let's move on, you guys. Our time's ticking away here.
We're almost done.
Well, I know, but I gotta look back.
Okay. 120E is new with press. This is a code of ethics for Illinois educators that you wanted to incorporate by reference. Okay? So this is the code that you would be incorporating by reference. Right? And, excuse me, responsibility to students, self, colleagues, profession, responsibility of the State Board of Education. This is what us educators are going to ascribe to for ethical conduct. Since you already put it into the policy as by reference, I guess you're going to adopt this one.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Ready, good to go on that?
5200 is terms and conditions of employment and dismissal. These revisions only affect the footnotes and the legal references, the press policy. The district's current policy is substantially similar, and the footnotes and legal references address new performance evaluation provisions. And since that's the law anyway, it just makes sense to go ahead and adopt the new policy so that they're together.
How are we on the dates listed?
So do we want to add them to the new one? On the old, 5200, we had, a note, like a sentence that says, please refer to the IEA, NEA, collective bargaining agreement for matters of employment. Should we add that into the new, terms and conditions of employment dismissal policy? Because it's not in there.
What do you say, Miss Knott, on the old one?
On the old one, you have, please refer to the IEA, NEA, collective bargaining agreement for matters of employment.
Very last line on.
I see.
Page 1 of the old one. The very last line. Do we want to put that in the new
The
one?
old one?
Yeah,
The old one right there, that's,
Right.
that's
but
the sentence that's not in the press policy. Because that was something that was added by the Board of Education in addition to the press policy, so.
they don't have it.
Was covered.
Right, because we do have a union. Do we have to add that? Do you think it would be better?
That's one of those things where I guess it really doesn't matter if it's in policy or not, because that's the labor law,
Right,
you know? So it doesn't have to be in there,
but we have to follow it.
because the collective bargaining agreement is what has to be followed.
Right, so,
But,
But
you know,
if
the
we-
collective bargaining agreement refers back to Illinois law anyway, you know, so I guess, you know, when we're talking about employment and conditions and dismissals, you know, we've got to follow state law when dismissing a teacher, and teacher evaluation systems are pursuant to state law. So it's just kind of redundant language, but I don't care. I mean, it doesn't help, doesn't hurt.
If you
So
were
I-
going through the policy, that would give you a heads up to also check the contract. If you were looking for something, if there was a problem or question.
So who is in agreement to add that back in?
Yeah, it was not gonna hurt anything.
Okay, so just add that back in, Mr. Aldridge.
Will do.
And we'll move to our last one.
That was the last one, right?
That was
Yeah.
That was the last one.
Okay.
There you
I
go.
think we have one more. All right. Then we need a motion to adjourn, please.
Make the motion to adjourn.
no, you can't.
Comments?
Yeah.
Public
Oh,
comment.
Whoops.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to watch that time. You have a comment? Okay.
Randy Giddens, 821 South Freeport Avenue. I don't know if that's a policy manual there. May I ask, what is the date that you adopted policy 6.90? And while you're looking at that, the real reason I came here, concerning the transportation again, I mean, that's why I originally came here.
5.90?
6.90.
6.90.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the manual in front of Mrs. Turner or not.
That's the board
No.
meeting minutes.
Oh, it's
Because
not-
the reason I'm asking is an attorney recommended back in May 2012. He took to the current policy, and had the board been following that current policy, a lot of the controversy would have went away. And I FOIA'd the letter from the attorney. If y'all want to look up that letter, I think half the board's got that letter. It was dated May 16th. And he made recommendations on what to change the policy 6.902. You may have changed it, and I missed it, I don't know. But I never heard the board ever vote to change that policy to give you the authority that you assumed the board had back in March of 2012.
Are you, Mr. Giddens, you're really referring to 8:90?
Is it 890?
I don't know, sir, I'm just asking.
She's shaking her head, yes.
What is it? What
It's
is the
about
policy?
the Parents Club.
Yes, 8.90.
Is it 8? Okay, see, I apologize.
No, I just want to be
But
sure.
the letter was dated, I believe, May 16, 2012,
What letter?
from the attorney.
You have that?
Yes, I FOIA'd it back in 2012. I didn't bring it with me, I didn't plan on talking about that this period.
Okay.
But I'm letting you know so you can look it up, okay? But getting on to transportation, I talked about, an incident that keeps stuck in my memory, what happened to a girl about 10 years ago when she should have been here, and what really happened to the little girl. I mean, it's terrible, and I'm not going to go back through those details again. But I'm looking at, on March 12th, they changed, on March 12, 2012, the board changed the rules on the bus transportation, extending it back to 1.5 miles statutory, a bunch of other stuff. And I've spoke out against that. This is probably the third time now. I'm going to keep doing it because if something happens to a child, if they get struck by a car over there, because it's real easy to fall, they're all covered up, they're all bundled up. You realize the weather that we've just had recently, and then making these kids walk so far. I know other districts do it, but in our district, with that's just your blank. I know the number is 72% low income. And I just feel the board should keep that helping hand that they had. Prior to that date, the board reached out and helped the families. They had empty seats on the buses. They transported these kids so they didn't have to spend as long out in that cold weather. My concerns is frostbite, hypothermia, and the fact that they're all bundled up, the car loses control, like I talked about the first time I met you all. And some of you remember that morning that you couldn't stop on the hill in front of my house. I don't want to see a child get hurt. That's the reason I'm going to keep coming to this board until I get a majority of the board saying, let's put kids in those empty seats. I realize you don't have the funds to bus every kid to the school, but I don't know how many buses it was. Previous boards were able to do it, and you reached out what they could. It's a big difference a child walking 1/2 mile to school and 1.5 miles. And 1.5 miles, believe your nurse, she can tell you, you could get frostbite by the time you reach Parkview School, the early stages of frostbite. Let's avoid that. When a child gets struck by a car or gets a cold weather injury, I know the board's going to look at it. Then let's avoid that. Let's go back to the way it was before the March 12th vote. Is all I'm asking for transportation. Return to what it used to be, and reach out and help these parents, low-income families. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Giddens. The board will discuss that further. At this time, could we have a motion, please, to adjourn our committee of the whole?
Make the motion to adjourn the committee meeting.
Second.
Linda Bailey,
Aye.
Pam Griner,
Aye.
Brenda Cagle, Val Reagan,
Aye.
Rebecca Kern, aye. Judy Strong.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Meeting adjourned.